Hello and welcome back to Big LEZ'S League and All Rugby League Experience. Now, if you didn't watch the last preview, you haven't seen this setup yet, we're looking brand new going into 2023. I honestly can't wait for this season to get underway, but we can't do the season without the season previews, and this is the last season preview for 2023. We're going to be going through a lot of clubs: the Broncos, the Cowboys, the Warriors, the Bulldogs, the Dragons, and the Manly Seagulls. In this one, it is going to be an absolute ripper. Now, I said the last one was going to be a long one. This one's going to be a long one. Obviously, the last one was only 40 minutes or something because I absolutely flew through it. Hayden's back, guys, so I think that's a little bit easier for me as well. Get to bounce off someone and get their thoughts as well. So you're getting two perspectives, even better. I really hope you guys enjoy this one. Make sure you sit back, relax, and enjoy the last part of the season previews. Hello and welcome back to Big LEZ'S League and All Rugby League Experience. It's the last episode of the season previews, guys. Can you believe it? Can you believe Hayden stuck with me for this long? Very excited for this one. It's going to be a super long one as well. We've got 6 teams here: the Broncos, the Cowboys, the Warriors, the Sharks, the Dragons, and the Manly Seagulls. But first, I'll introduce my good mate Hayden here, the True Blue Sporting Podcast. How you been, mate? How's your week been?
Yeah, good, thanks. The week before footy, some would say even better than grand final week. And the last episode of the season previews means that, we're storming towards round one. So that's always a good thing, but looking forward to getting stuck into this one.
Still can't believe round one is this Thursday, mate. Super pumped, super excited. But let's get straight into these teams. We'll start off with the Brisbane Broncos. Now, geez, mate, in the off-season, they've been in the headlines quite a bit, or even mostly at the start, I should say. Mostly at the start of the off-season, they were definitely in the papers. Obviously, a few things going wrong at the club internally. We'll talk about some of the gains and then a heap of losses here as well, mate. We'll go through the gains first. So obviously, Jesse Arthurs, he was on a loan deal to the Warriors. Now he's been brought back to the Broncos, which I think is massive for them. Talk to me about Jesse Arthurs, mate. Is he someone that you see potentially maybe getting a crack in the starting team, or do you think he's going to be a depth player?
Well, he had a good trial against the Gold Coast. But yeah, he's probably a depth signing for them. The fact that they let him go out on loan to the Warriors probably shows that he's probably a little bit surplus to requirements at the Brisbane Broncos on the edges. But Jesse Arthur is a very handy replacement to come into that back line if one of their stars do go down. The likes of Cobbo, Farnworth. Those guys, he's able to fill that gap if needed. I wouldn't have him starting round one, but it's a very, very solid replacement if there are injuries in those positions.
You are right, mate. They did have a pretty decent trial. He did have a pretty decent trial against the Gold Coast, but a great depth player there, very talented as well. I think he did well at the Warriors as well when he was over there. So a pretty decent depth player. Jock Madden from the West Tigers, you'd be a bit filthy about this one. We were obviously talking about it the other week and why the Tigers would have let him go. Talk to me about him coming to the Brisbane Broncos. Certainly a great depth player, and obviously if Ezra Mam, he doesn't have the best start to the year, could we say Jock Madden maybe snatch that 6 role?
Yeah, Jock is a fantastic player. He's an Australian schoolboy. He's had sprinkling of experience in first grade. I think he's gone to Brisbane to sort of get that opportunity. He sees that there's probably a way in with Ezra Mam there. Mam was fantastic in his rookie season, but the thing with rookies is their second year and how they can maintain where they sort of set the standard, and that'll be Ezra Mam's challenge coming into this season. And with someone like Jock there putting pressure, it's really important for the halves room of the Brisbane Broncos, but also Adam Reynolds. There's no illusion that he is likely to miss a few games this year through injury. So to have someone as capable as Jock Madden there and waiting in the wings, he can go in and execute a game plan as a game managing half, uh, you know, very, very well. So I think it's a good pickup for Brisbane. If we look at, we spoke about the impact it would sort of have with the Tigers a couple of weeks ago. But for Brisbane, it's a handy pickup. Obviously, with the loss of Tyson Gamble as well, you think it's probably a like replacement in their roster with him coming in.
Yeah, I agree, mate. I think he's going to be fantastic, Jock Madden. And yeah, as you said, he can definitely slot in and do a job there for the Brizzy Bronx. Reece Walsh is another guy that's come into the system, but obviously he's injured. He's done his eye socket, or at least a part of his eye socket there. So he'll be out for round one. I've got two questions for you here, mate. Obviously, losing a guy like Jermaine Asako will hurt them, obviously, with Reece Walsh being out. They'll probably have to go with a guy like Selwyn Cobbo, I would assume, at fullback. My question for you is, who would you put at fullback for the first few rounds, depending on how long Reece Walsh takes to recover from this one? Yeah, and what's the impact that he's going to have when he does come back for this team this season?
I think you'd try Cobbo back there. There's obviously been whispers the whole time he's coming to first grade. The natural progression for his career is to spend majority of his career out at the back at fullback. And it's easier to sort of to put him back there, know that Reece Walsh will be back, and that's their long-term fullback. That's who they've signed to play in that fullback jersey. And I think Reece Walsh can potentially have a really good impact for Brisbane. The only worries that I have is defensively. He is, in comparison to a lot of fullbacks in the competition, quite a smaller body. So when defending on the line, situations like that's probably the biggest concern and development for Reece Walsh, continuing in his career. He kind of took a backward step last year after bursting on the scene. So I think it'll work in Brisbane, but they've got to be given time. And yeah, I think Cobbo probably gets a crack at round one. Who are you looking at in that fullback jersey?
Look, mate, I'd have to agree. I don't think they've got many options there. Obviously, as I said before, with a guy like Jermaine Asako going to the Dolphins now. David Mead's also out. Tamari Martin's also out. I mean, they haven't really left themselves with many options here. So yeah, I would have to agree. I think the Cobbo would probably get the crack. I am a little bit worried, obviously, with the error count in the Indigenous game as well. Coming into this year, it was a sort of a concern that we were having for the Brisbane Broncos. Is Cobbo going to sort of mature and maybe get those errors out of his game during the off season? But look, yeah, I guess I'm a little bit concerned putting him in such a key role this early on in the season as well. I know it's only temporary, but look, I mean, looking at the Broncos draw, I mean, they don't have the most friendly draw either to start the year. Yeah, I don't know, mate. I think it's pretty much the only option they really do have. But I think Cobbo will do a good job. I mean, I don't want to talk down on the guy. He's a great player. And as you said, very, very talented. I think he can definitely get the job done. It's just, balancing out those errors, hopefully not getting many errors in these games as well, that he does get an opportunity to play fullback. Does Reece Walsh make the Origin squad this year?
No, I don't think so. I think there's too many players in key positions for Queensland that are in front of him. Kalen Ponga, although he's transitioned into the 5'8" role this year with Newcastle, you'd imagine with his performances in the Origin arena, he'll retain the one spot. And then you look at Jersey 14. I just don't think he's got that big enough frame to play Jersey 14 in Origin. But he'll definitely, if he comes back from this injury and hits the ground running, I think probably the main thing for Reece Walsh at the moment is focusing on getting his form right for Brisbane. Once he gets his form right for Brisbane, that'll all look after itself. But transitioning to a new club, the expectation from me would be that he's just looking to settle into the system, the structures that are in place, and rep honours are in his future. There's no doubt that he is a rep player of the future. I just don't think it'll be within this 12 months.
Yeah, look, it's an interesting one, mate. I think you could definitely have the potential of making this squad, but as you say, there's too many guys in key positions, and Look, I guess if we go down the scenario of a knockwood as well, if Karen Munster gets injured again, or if Kalen Ponga, maybe doesn't exceed our expectations this year, and Billy Slater goes for a different outfit, I could definitely see him maybe slotting in somewhere. But look, if Kalen Ponga hits the ground running, if obviously Cameron Munster doesn't get injured, I think that there's really not much room for him in the starting 17. But look, it'd be an interesting one. I think it's definitely one I'll be watching out for. I think that he definitely has the potential to. We just got to see if he hits the ground running, as you said, and if he does, I think he definitely has the potential to be in the squad. So it will definitely be something I have to watch out for. Martin Tapau. I think his experience in the forward pack is going to be absolutely huge, especially with the forward pack they're building, the leaders they're building in the forward pack. You look at Carrigan. I would say Payne Haas, before some things happened, was, I would say a leader in this side in terms of the forward pack. What does Martin Tapau bring to this Broncos outfit?
I think he takes a lot of pressure off those two guys that you just mentioned. For long periods of time there, definitely in the early part of Haas's career, it's been him in the middle third of the field, and he's been the only real one there. We saw Carrigan step up in a massive way last season, and you can probably look at the demise of Brisbane, for a lack of a better word, the back end of last season, and their drop off to the fact Carrigan spent a lot of that on the sideline through a suspension on a tackle of Jackson Hastings towards the end of the year, and without them, they looked rudderless, quite frankly. So to have someone like Tapau able to have that experience, he's played in big games in the competition. He's he's a fantastic front rower. Probably fell off a little bit last year and didn't play his best footy. But the fact that he's going to Brisbane to mentor these young forwards, they've still got such a young forward pack, Brisbane, that someone like Marty Tapau coming into that forward pack is going to do them the world of good and take so much pressure off Carrigan and Haas.
I think people forget how good Martin Tapau is as a front rower. I think people really do forget that. I think I would say, and you might disagree, but I think he might have had a bit of pressure on him at the Manly Seagulls. I think that's pretty much lifted off his shoulders now, especially during that contract period. He's trying to get a new contract with the club and they just weren't budging. And he sort of felt that pressure a little bit towards the back end of his time at Manly. I think at the Broncos, he's going to be fantastic. I'd assume he'd come off the bench. I don't think he's going to start, at least not at the start of the year. What do you think actually about that? Do you think Martin Tapau is going to start in the front row, or do you think he's going to be a bench forward?
I think Marty plays his best footy when he's coming off the bench and impacting the game that way. I don't know. So they've got Payne. Who else would they? They've got Flegler to potentially start there as well. Carrigan obviously wearing the 13. So I think maybe potentially off the bench, Marty Tapau and his impact will probably best suit their style.
Well, this is the only thing I'm thinking, mate. As well, there's a guy we're sort of forgetting about here, Kobe Hetherington. He played some really good games at lock forward. I would almost consider moving Carrigan to the front row. Then you start with Haas and Carrigan in the front. You have Kobe Hetherington in the 13. Obviously that still leaves Martin Tapau off the bench, but I wouldn't mind that sort of forward combination there. Are you considering starting Kobe Hetherington? Obviously he's injured for the first few rounds, but when he comes back, is that something you'd be thinking about, or is Kobe Hetherington more of an impact off the bench as well?
Look, it's an option for them, that's for sure. But I just think Paddy Carrigan, you got to have him out there for as long as possible, and in that lock forward position, you can play extra minutes there. We saw in Origin just what he did in that lock forward position. So I wouldn't move him to fit Hetherington. I think Hetherington coming off the bench is just fine with his little bit of extra leg speed and ruck speed to change the game and the momentum of it. But it's definitely an option they've got, and that's a good thing for them for sure, that they've got options there to tinker with. If things don't work, they can go try a different route. With Brisbane, we probably haven't said that over the last couple of seasons. It's been very one-dimensional with where they're going to succeed. So the fact that they've got options and different ways to play is definitely good signs for Brisbane. That's for sure.
Mate, I totally agree. Now I think before we get into the losses, we've sort of got to talk about this one because it's with Brisbane. And there's a bit of a double whammy as well, a double sword to the chest here for Brisbane. Tom Flegler and Herbie Farnworth have signed with the Dolphins for next year as well. Had to bring this one up because it is huge. I know it's not for this year, and I know we're doing the previews for this year, but talk to me about the impact that is going to have on this Broncos outfit going into 2024.
Yeah, they're big losses. Herbie Farnworth was exceptional last year before he fractured his elbow. His performances at the World Cup for England were phenomenal. I think a lot of clubs were looking at Herbie Farnworth. I did hear whispers with Canterbury, the Tigers, even the Roosters at one stage, and the Dolphins were able to get his signature. So that's a really good signing for them. And Flegler as well is an Origin middle. So, but I don't think it'll impact them this season. I think the fact that their contracts are done, they're sorted, they're out of the way early in the year. They know that they've got 12 more months at the Broncos, and they'll be 100% committed to hopefully for the Broncos getting them back to finals footy and competing and restoring their dominance in the competition.
Yeah, totally, mate. And I can't wait to see how that one goes for them. And look, for me personally, I think that Herbie Farnworth and Tom Flegler are great signings. I mean, Herbie Farnworth as well potentially could play fullback for them coming into this side. I know they were looking at Stephen Crichton to make that role for them. Herbie Farnworth made it clear he wants to play fullback. So it'll be interesting to see where he ends up in that team. Tom Flegler as well, as you said, an Origin middle. And look, to be honest, depending on how their depth goes this year, I think he's going to make the squad yet again. I think he's a fantastic footballer, Tom Flegler, and just an absolute goer. One of your more, I would say, almost old school front rowers as well. And a great player, Tom Flegler there. So great signings, Herbie Farnworth and Tom Flegler. Let's talk about this year, though. Some of the losses for the Brisbane Broncos. Jermaine Asako left for the Gold Coast during the year, but has signed with the Dolphins. David Mead and Ryan James have retired. Tamari Martin has gone to the New Zealand Warriors. Tamari Martin to the New Zealand Warriors. Talk to me about this one because he provides such a lot of experience. And I think that for the Brisbane Broncos, in terms of versatility, I think it's a little bit of a hit there, losing a guy like Tamari Martin. Talk to me, where do you think I will talk about him at the Warriors when we get to the Warriors later on, but where would you see Tamari Martin, if he was still at the Broncos, where would you have seen him end up in this team?
I think the fact that Reece Walsh probably signed would mean that he would probably fall out of their top. They're definitely starting 13. Maybe there's a spot for him on the bench, but they've looked to improve their roster, and they believe that Reece Walsh was a better fit at fullback for them. And I think Martin going to the Warriors, we'll touch on later, is a great pickup for them. But it is a loss. He's an experienced campaigner. He's played in a grand final before, so it's a loss for them. But they've got the players that have replaced him, and they haven't sort of let go a key spine player and a key playmaker, and not been able to replace him at all. They've recruited well in those positions, and although he's a loss, if I'll ask you this: if you had Reece Walsh or Tomato Martin, which one are you going to pick and have in your side?
Look, for me, totally Reece Walsh. I think young as well, fresh legs. I think that's always an up. Tamari Martin would still probably be in my 17. I'd probably have him at 14. I know they've obviously got the hooker sort of rotation, but I probably would still have him regardless at my 14 if he was still at the Broncos. I think he's too good not to have in the 17. Or even just a Josh Reynolds role where he's one of those guys that just picks up the guys around him in his squad. So, yeah, look, I think it's a big loss in terms of experience, but I sort of agree with you there. I think that I'd rather have a guy like Reece Walsh sitting at fullback. Tessie New. Now, obviously, with all of these losses, most of the guys are going to be having starting or bench roles in their sides. The thing about all of these losses, well, most of these losses, obviously, other than the ones that have retired or been released, are going to have starting roles at other clubs and probably would have maybe started for the Broncos if they had stayed. But then I look at all of these losses, right? And, I think while, they're big losses, I think it was necessary in terms of the side they're building going into the next few years. I mean, I'll read out the names now: Jermaine Asako, Dave Mead, Ryan James, Tamati Martin, Brenko Lee, Tessin Yu, Tyson Gamble. Tyson Gamble's a big one for me. I reckon Tyson Gamble, that was a huge loss. In terms of depth in the halves, I think that was big. I like how they've got Jock Madden. I think that sort of covers that role a little bit, but still, like Tyson Gamble, he's one of those guys that just picks up the guys around him. Very vocal in games. He's one of those guys that is, growing into a leader while still young. You could definitely see those leadership qualities through him. I think he's a massive loss, but still, I mean, as harsh as it sounds, necessary. Zach Hosking, Jake Turpin, Albert Kelly, Reese Kennedy, Tyrone Roberts. Tyson Gamble, talk to me about that. What's your thought on that loss, and do you see him in the 17 for the Newcastle Knights?
Um, Look, I think it's a loss in terms of it's a locker room guy leaving, but he's gone to Newcastle to take up an opportunity. Uh, I think there's no secret there was a little bit of disconnect between the coach and Gamble with a few of his comments that he came out and said in the media. Um, that could be a contributing factor to why he left the club. But he's a competitor on the field, someone that players would love to play with. No doubt he's always in the contest, always in the fight. So, which is what Brisbane probably needed over the last couple of seasons. So I think he was good for them, but at the same time, he was stuck behind Mam. Walsh came to the club, and he can play 5'8" as well if that's the direction they want to go. So the fact that these young players are coming through and they're taking their opportunities, it probably just isn't there isn't that opportunity for Gamble to crack that side, and he's going to take an opportunity somewhere else. And although it's a loss, it's one that they can easily fix, and I think they'll miss his competitiveness more than anything he does on the field.
Totally, mate. He just has such a competitive nature, and I think that is going to be a massive up for Newcastle. I could maybe see, and this obviously depends on their plans with Kurt Mann, whether he plays 13 again this year, or obviously goes into that 14 sort of role and sort of slims down a bit, and plays that sort of half off the bench, roaming lock sort of role. I think that for me, that depends if Tyson Gamble's on the bench or not. But yeah, a great signing in terms of that locker room guy, as you said before. Zach Hosking as well on the edge. Mate, he played 3 games for the Broncos. He averaged 120 meters a game in 3 games. That is insane. That just sparks potential for me. I think that he's going to be fantastic. What are your thoughts on Zach Hosking, and talk to me about his impact he's going to have at Penrith? I think we sort of touched on this a few weeks ago, but yeah, how big of a loss is he for this Broncos outfit?
Yeah, it's a fantastic pickup for Penrith. They've obviously identified the need to sign a couple of edge back roles with Garner coming in as well. So I think we did mention it when we spoke about Penrith a little while ago that he'll come in and develop out of sight. I think we saw it in the World Club Challenge. There's definitely potential there. So it's just about producing it week in, week out, and in that Penrith system, which is slowly or quickly rather becoming arguably the best in the game. There's no reason as to why he can't go to another level. For Brisbane, you wonder why he wasn't sort of getting the opportunities, and why that he was moved on and given so little time to develop in a Brisbane jersey.
Yeah, totally. I agree. I think this loss is. I don't know. I would have if I was the Broncos. I'd be keeping this guy as a young mongrel forward. He can play in the middle. He can play on an edge. Big boy as well. In 3 games, averaging just over, I think it was 120 meters per game. Averaging, I think it was around 40 to 50 post contact meters per game in those 3 games as well. That's a lot of potential right there. And I think they're going to miss maybe a little bit of that young mongrel, but they have got a few young mongrels. So many young mongrels that they had to let go of one of those young mongrels in TC Rabadi as well. And obviously Zach Hosking going to the Penrith Panthers. Yeah, I still think this one's going to hit hard, especially defensively. Haywood's a tackle bot for sure. But yeah, no, big loss there. Zach Hosking, Jake Turpin as well. I mean, I think it relieves a bit of a headache, as harsh as that sounds, that Jake Turpin is gone because obviously they were sort of trying to work out that hooking rotation. And, it was either him, Billy Walters, or Corey Pakes. It's still Billy Walters and Corey Pakes sort of fighting for that role. And Tyson Smoothie. You add Tyson Smoothie to that equation as well. Like, fuck, I think it relieves a little bit of a headache there, but they've still got one, and it's a good headache to have. I mean, they've plenty of depth in that number 9 role. Who's your 9 and who's your 14 going into this season for the Broncos?
I think you start with Billy Walters. He's shown that he can do a job in that position. I think if you look at which one can offer you more off the bench, when you've got two dummy halves, you can fall into a trap of just sort of starting the better one and then leaving the other one off the bench. Whereas Penrith displayed it so well last year that they weren't afraid to put Coruscant on the bench because that's how he would impact the game, coming in with the juice taken out of it. I think that's where Corey Pakes could impact the game. Even someone like Tyson Smoothie, a little bit quicker in and around that ruck and a little bit of craftsmanship, whereas Billy Walters is a lot more pick up, pass, make your tackles, and take the sting out of the game. So I think Walters starts and Pakes off the bench for mine.
You'd have Pakes over Tyson Smoothie?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd like Tyson Smoothie. I was really impressed with how he went in that trial match, especially against Wynnum Manly. I get it, it's a reserve grade side, but there was a lot of potential there. The few minutes he got, playing against the Gold Coast Titans, I thought, while it was only like 2 or 3 minutes, it was a pretty decent 2 to 3 minutes as well. It was great for Tweeds. Oh, it wasn't Tweeds. It was the Falcons, the Sunshine Coast Falcons in reserve grade in the Q Cup last year. Thought it was fantastic for them. I think he's too good for reserve grade just quietly. I reckon he'd be a fantastic 14, and whether that means, Corey Pakes is the guy to miss out. Look, I don't know. It's a headache that I'm having right now. I couldn't tell you, to be honest, gun to head, who is going to take that 14 role because they both are first grade number 9s, to be honest, in my opinion at least. I tell you what, it's going to be more of a headache if Billy Walters ends up being an 80-minute hooker by the midpoint of the season. But look, Tyson Smoothie, he can also play in the halves as well, which I think is a big up in terms of, who you're picking in that 14 jersey. Yeah, look, I don't know. I guess I agree with you, Billy Walters and Corey Pakes, just due to first grade experience. But, geez, Tyson Smoothie, I think it's a bit of a rough one to leave him out. It's definitely going to be interesting to see who walks out round 1, but I think I agree with you. I think it's going to have to be Billy Walters, Corey Pakes. But Tyson Smoothie, guys, definitely one to watch. Definitely one to watch in this side, especially, during that origin period. Depending on what happens with this side, he could definitely get a crack somewhere. I think they really need to sort out their spine, mate. I think they really need to sort out their spine. Obviously, there's a bit of dramas, obviously, as we just said, in the hooking role. Also, there's 2 guys that can play 13. There's also about 3 or 4 guys that can play 6. Does Ezra Mam keep his spot all year round, or do you see someone else hopping in?
Yeah, I think he keeps his spot. I think their spine's pretty set for mine. I don't see much change other than with that Walsh injury. they're obviously not going to have their first choice spine. I think the question is that the fact they've got options, that's a positive thing. But I think they've got their first choice spine, but it's just how often will they spend time on the field together? That'll go a long way in determining how successful the Broncos will be this year. How many games will Walsh, Mam, Reynolds, Walters, and Carrigan play together? If they play majority of the games together, there's no reason why they can make that leap into the finals. But if Walsh is missing a few games, Reynolds has a history of missing patches throughout a season. Carrigan's going to be withdrawn from the side during Origin. There's no doubt about that. So it's how do they manage that, and how do they maximise their time with those players in those positions? And if they're able to do that, I can see them climbing the ladder for sure. So I think their spine's pretty set for mine.
Are you concerned about Renault at all going into this year?
No, I wouldn't say concerned. I think he's been managing little niggles here and there throughout the last 5 years of his career. So I don't see a concern. And if there is a concern, someone like Jock Madden is able to come in and replace Reynolds. But he's been dealing with these injuries for a little while. The fact that he's able to manage them now, and he wouldn't have backed himself with the contract he signed if he didn't think his body could handle it. So I'm not concerned at all. I think he's a professional and he'll be able to maximise his time on the field.
Yeah, totally, mate. Well, I'm very interested to see how the Broncos will go going into this year. And yeah, look, I think one of the main things as well going into this year is just to blood the young guys in. There's a plenty of young guys we talked about blooding them into this side. And yeah, I think that the Broncos are going to go quite well this year. If it's a reflection of how they went at the start of last year, I see them probably going and getting around 6th to 8th. I think that's where the Broncos sort of land for me. Where do you think they sort of end up as their bracket on the ladder?
Well, we're going to go through our ladder predictions at the end of this. So, I've obviously got them somewhere. I can't wrestle on where to put them exactly. I'm still tossing and turning. It's definitely going to be 7 to 10. I think they'll either make finals or just miss it once again. And it all comes down to how often their key players are on the field together.
Yeah, look, mate, I agree. Now, I think we've spent a bit too much time going through the Broncos. I know Den and Kemp would be happy, but we got to move on to the North Queensland Cowboys, mate. I'm excited for them, and I'm particularly. You made a point the other week about South. So obviously, when we weren't recording, that they haven't lost too many people, so it could be a massive sort of advantage for them going into this year. I think the Cowboys are pretty much the exact same, other than obviously Tom Gilbert and Hamiso Tabuai-Fidow obviously going to the Dolphins. I sort of resonate with your point that you made the other week about South, but I would also, I could see that working for the Cowboys as well going into this year. Gains, they haven't got too many of those. They've got James Tiamo and Jack Gozaweski. They haven't gained too many guys. They also haven't lost too many guys. Talk about how advantageous that's going to be going into this year for the Cowboys.
Well, they've obviously backed their roster. I am a little bit concerned about the Cowboys. I will be honest, and that's not me saying that they're a very good side, and what they did last year is to be taken with a grain of salt. That's definitely not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that so many of their key players last season had career years. You look at Tom Dearden, he's never played better footy in his life. Nanai, Robson, they were at the top of their game. Drinkwater. It's whether they can match it once again and stay consistent at that level. And that's the tough challenge for the Cowboys moving into this season. They're not going to have, I heard during the week that they're not going to have that surprise factor that teams are going to be a little bit surprised with how they play. Talk out of North Queensland is that they are happy being the hunted. You can talk it all you want over the summer that, we're happy for teams to come and put a target on our back, but, you got to stand up and deliver. I've seen a lot of people having them playing in the grand final. I'm a little bit concerned. It's not me saying that they don't have the potential to get there. That they definitely do, but I think expectation on the Cowboys should just probably drop back a step. I don't know where you sit on it, but I'm just a little bit cautious with the Cowboys this season.
Look, mate, I think even if they do drop back a bit, and I sort of made this point last time as well, the fact that the comp is so even now, you're going to see a big shift in who is in the 8 and who's not. I sort of agree with what Guru said on Bloke in the Bar the other day, that it could stay quite the same as it was last year. But then again, like with how even it is going into this year, with some of the moves of players, it's sort of evened out quite substantially, to be honest. So, Cowboys, they could definitely drop, but they could also obviously go up as well. And I might be giving my prediction a little bit too early here, but I think they're definitely in the 8. I think that they're definitely.
Oh yeah, I do agree with that. I do have them in the 8, but just maintaining that level is a concern. They're definitely going to be in the 8. There's no doubt about that. Off the back of their defense alone.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, mate. I think they're definitely in the 8. They could drop off a little bit. I don't think it's going to be too much to the point where they, drop out of the top 8. I think they're definitely there again. I think they're definitely going to be quite successful. I think they're just going to keep what they were doing last year, as you said, just keep it similar to last year, match the intensity. There's not really too much to say about the Cowboys, to be honest. I think they've just got to match it. They've just got to match it from last year. We'll talk about the gains first. James Taumo from the West Tigers. Obviously, for me, I think he'll be playing off the bench. They've got Jordan McLean, who's sort of the leader forward in that side. So I think that takes a bit of pressure off James Taumo. Tell you what, though, watching the trial the other week, James Taumo, without that beard, he goes full mongrel. Without the beard, he just turns full mongrel. I loved it. Talk to me about James Taumo. Talk to me about the impact he's going to have on this Cowboy side going into this season.
I think Jimmy's probably over the last couple of years at the Tigers is, it's been a struggle for him. Obviously, towards the back end of last year, it probably wasn't his happiest time playing footy, and he's come out and said that over the summer that he's regained that love for the game up in North Queensland, and what he did for that Penrith side is extremely underrated. His leadership in that 2020 campaign, just mentoring those young forwards, was absolutely phenomenal. So he is now going to go into a very similar role with the Cowboys, with a relatively young roster. There are experienced men alongside him, which again takes the pressure off him, so he can just concentrate on playing footy, and that's the most important thing.
Yeah, no, I agree, mate. I agree. I think that, he's going to have a ton of pressure taken off him this year. I don't think he's getting a captaining role, which, sounds like a bad thing, but I think that it's actually, again, going to take that pressure off his shoulders and just allow him to be him in this side and play his footy. And as you said, a lot happier up in North Queensland. Don't know what that says about you guys over at the West Tigers, mate, but, we'll wait and see. We'll wait and see.
That's 2022.
Yeah, look, James Taumo, I think he's going to have a decent year this year. As we said, a bit of mongrel in him. Can't wait to see that mongrel come out in round 1. Jack Gozowski as well. Geez, that's a name I didn't hear much until he signed with this team. I didn't really hear his name much after he signed with St. George and then coming over to the North Queensland Cowboys. Tell me about the impact that a Jack Gozowski is going to have on this Cowboys outfit, and is he in your starting 17?
I think Gajewski, when he played his best footy, it was at Manly, and he showed glimpses. I don't know what happened when he went to St. George. They say that's where careers go to die, I reckon, with St. George. But no, we'll mention it. We'll talk about them later. But in all seriousness, I think it's a solid pickup for them to have someone like Gajewski in the wings with Nanai. Heelan Lukey's coming back from an ACL injury, who they think's a better footballer than Nanai, and that's scary. Leilua, is there as well. So that they've got some depth in their outside backs, and that's really important. Sorry, not their outside backs, their edge back rows. So I think it's just a solid pickup that may go under the radar. He'll come in and be able to do a job, and that's what those Cowboys players do. Is come in and do a job, and that could be a replacement for Tommy Gilbert.
Yep. I totally agree, mate. I think that he's going to be great. I think that he could definitely come in and do a job. The only thing I'm concerned about with him being an edge back rower is he hasn't got that much size on him. He's not really big compared to some of the other forwards that they do have, who have got a shit ton of size on them, especially the Islander boys. You look at guys like Jeremiah Nanai and some of the other guys in that team, absolutely massive. Jack Gozowski doesn't really have too much size on him, but quite agile and quick for a young back rower as well. We saw glimpses at Manly of the potential that he does have. So, look, I'm interested to see where he ends up. I really am. Is he in the starting 17 for me? I'm not sure. I think Taumo takes a spot. They've got another guy whose name is escaping me, who was injured for most of last year.
Lukey?
Yeah, Lukey. Helam Lukey, that's right. That's coming back into this team as well. He'd take another spot. Luciano Leilua, I guess, frees up a spot. You can almost count him as a loss, I think. Now, I don't want to say anything that's incorrect, but I think he's been stood down by the club, or at least is temporarily stood down by the club. With some stuff happening not in rugby league, we won't talk about that, but I guess that does open up a spot. But they've got a bunch of young guys coming in, Griffin Neem as well. Look, I don't know if there is a spot for Jack Gozowski just quietly, but I think he can definitely work his way into this team because we know the potential he does have. Now, the losses for this team. Now, Dejan Arce went to the Warriors mid-year and now has gone to the Parramatta Eels. And then we've also got Tommy Gilbert here, who's obviously gone to the Dolphins, as well as Hamiso Tabiwai-Fidow and Lemon Lelu. Colony Lemon Lelu. Bloody hope I pronounced that right. They've all gone to the Dolphins. And then Ben Condon. Big Benny Condon, mate. Gone to the Manly Seagulls as well. He is an absolute unit. He is a unit, mate. I think he was in one trial for the Manly Seagulls. I think it might have been the first one. He is an absolute unit. Big boy for a back rower. I think he'll be great for Manly. Talk to me about the loss of Tom Gilbert, mate, because he was phenomenal last year.
Yeah, he was phenomenal. He came out of nowhere, really. He turned himself from a bench forward in the NRL to an Origin representative. He was fantastic. Probably credits the coaching of Todd Payton and his coaching staff. And he's gone to the Dolphins to take an opportunity. Fantastic for him, and it's a loss for the Cowboys for sure. I want to touch on the loss of Arce. I think he is a fantastic footballer that they're going to miss greatly. Not necessarily in their starting 17, but to have someone of his ability to come in and to play the way he does. I think he'll be a real star of the future in the game. And then also the loss of the hammer. He was able to basically play the Mr. Fix-It role in their outside backs last year. And you can't blame him for going off and seeking a solidified opportunity at the Dolphins. But yeah, that's another loss for them as well.
Look, mate, and again, I think it was the same thing we were talking about, obviously, with the Broncos as well. Dejan Arce, Hamiso Tabiwai-Fidow. I mean, big losses for the club, but again, necessary to look at the team that they've got now. Murray Taulagi, another guy, for me at least, that came out of nowhere as well. Obviously played for a few years, actually. I didn't really see much of him. But he debuted, I think, now I might have to double check this, but I think he debuted back in 2018. And obviously he hasn't been in the side too much. I think he's had a few injuries come his way. But But yeah, no, he came out of nowhere for me and really solidified a spot in that starting team. So yeah, Hamaso Tabuai-Fidow, while a big loss, necessary. Dejan Arce can play anywhere from 1 to 7. And again, I think necessary as well. So yeah, look, a few big losses for the Cowboys, but necessary, and they haven't lost too much. They haven't lost too much, especially in key starting areas as well, which I like as well. And I think it will benefit them going into this year. Ladder prediction, mate. I have them in the 8. Just tell me again where you would sort of have them going into this year in that 8.
Yeah, not in the 4, but not dropping out of the 8.
Fair enough. I've got pretty much the same. I had 3rd to 8th. I think they could push for the top 4. But I agree with you, mate. I think bottom 4, I think is fair enough. But look, they exceeded expectations last year. Let's see if they can do it again. Yeah. The New Zealand Warriors. New Zealand Warriors. I am excited for this preview. I tell you that for free, mate, because I think they're very exciting, and the confidence they played with the other night. Look, if they roll into round 1 with the same confidence, mate, they're dangerous. They are dangerous. You look at some of these games. Baradini Corey, Luke Metcalf, Dylan Walker, Mitch Barnett, Chance the Good Clockstad, Tamari Martin, which we'll talk about, Jackson Ford, and Braden Williami. Braden Williami he disappeared off the face of the earth. Braden Williami, he was at he was at the St. George Illawarra Dragons. Disappeared off the
Careers,
face of the earth.
careers, they go to die.
I know. And then he's come back. Now, I don't know what this club name is, but he came from Perpignan. I don't even know where that is, mate. I don't even know where that is at all. Yeah. Anyway, he's come back and he's at the Warriors now. And saw a little bit of him in the trials. Didn't go too bad at all. Still got it. Still got it, mate. But look, we'll talk about some of the games at the top of the list, at the top of the chart here. The first one for me, and we'll talk about Manly obviously at the end, but talk to me about the impact of Dylan Walker coming into this team. He was fantastic at 14 for the Manly Seagulls. He's going to be fantastic at 14 for the Warriors, in my opinion. But you tell me the impact that he's going to have in this side.
Yeah, it's a very good signing for the New Zealand Warriors, and they've recruited pretty well. I think that the link that Dylan Walker provides for the halves to play together. He's that ball player in the middle, which is able to get the ball a little bit wider from Johnson, and there's still a little bit of talk around who's going to wear that 6 jersey, and that's something that I'll go to after this. But Dylan Walker, he's very direct with the footy. He knows when to run. He knows when to pass. And he's really developed a game which is well suited to that 14 role. The 14 role has changed over the years, and you have different teams try to do it different ways. Some go with an outside back there. Some go with a smaller forward to sort of do a little bit of ball playing, and the other teams go for a 9. So he provides that attack with an edge of difference, and that leg speed in the middle third of the field as well. I think he's going to be a big loss for Manly, and they're a very good signing for the Warriors.
Yeah, we'll talk about just how big of a loss he is going to be for Manly a little bit later on. But, geez, he is going to be awesome coming into this side. Awesome in that 14 jersey. For me, Baradini Corey from the Parramatta Eels. Now, for me, I think it's a loss, a pretty decent loss here for Parramatta, but a massive gain here for the New Zealand Warriors. A guy that can not only play in the middle or on an edge, but can slot in at centre and do a goddamn good job at it too if there's an injury, mate. Talk to me about Marata Niokore.
Yeah, he hits hard. Well, that was one thing that really stood out to me in that trial game against Melbourne is how hard he just hit, and he just gets stuck in and really just works hard for his teammates. And it's a good pickup. He's played in big games. He's played in a grand final now, so he's coming into that 4-pack as an experienced player along the likes of Barnett as well, which is a good pickup for them. but yeah, it's a really good pickup. He's going to be their hit man, and probably their Jared Warrior-Hargraves type player. Just come with me, boys, and I'll show you where to go.
Totally, mate. I agree. Maradona Corey, definitely one to watch for the New Zealand Warriors. Luke Metcalf injured for the first few rounds, but geez, what we saw from him in those trials, he is a talent. Now, we saw glimpses at the Cronulla Sharks, obviously. Wow, this guy is impressive. He almost was like the leader in this team at some stages of that game, especially in the first trial, wearing the 7 jersey and just absolutely killing it. Talk to me about Luke Metcalf going into this year, obviously when he returns from injury, and where do you see him in this side? That's a big question, mate, because the 14 jumpers filled, the 1 jumpers filled reportedly, the 6 and 7 jumpers are filled. Where do you see him in this side?
Yeah, I don't know where he fits. He shows glimpses of talent, um, and it's whether he can produce it week in, week out. But I think, as bad as it sounds, I think potentially biding his time in reserve grade will be a good thing. To play consistently, to play, um, regularly, maintaining that match fitness instead of having a bench role and coming on and playing only a couple of minutes, being able to own his craft a little bit longer. And then if one of those key players, as you mentioned, go down, he's straight in. He's the next man in, and you know that he can produce performances week in, week out. And it is exciting for the Warriors. The fact that they've got someone there who's just so cherry ripe to go, um, and they don't have to rush him. And it puts pressure on someone like Sean Johnson, who has over the last couple of years has entered a little bit of a decline in his career. There's a young, hungry playmaker sitting in the wings, and if you're not up to scratch, I don't think Webster will be afraid to say, um, go play some games in reserve grade. We're moving forward. So I think it's very exciting for the Warriors.
Mate, yeah, big question here for you. I know who I'm going to say, and I'll say it after. But who's your fullback for the New Zealand Warriors this year?
Nickel Klogstad for sure. I think that signing is going to arguably be one of the best this season. Criminally underrated. He's a top tier when he's on and when he's fit. He's a top tier fullback in this game. You saw in 2019, he was absolutely phenomenal for that Raiders side, and injuries over the last couple of years has plagued him. But yeah, number one, CNK back in the war, back in New Zealand, back with the Warriors. I think it's meant to be, and I think he's in for a ripping year.
I'm going to say something you don't like, mate. I reckon Luke Metcalf's my fullback, and I'd probably have Chance at centre. Um, I just think Luke Metcalf is too good to be out of this side, bro. I think he's way too good to be out of this side. And I know I sort of understand your comment, keep him in reserve grade, get him that experience, get him ready. He is ready. He's been ready for 2 years for me. Um, I think he's just ready to go. And I think I would be giving him that crack at fullback. When he comes back, I think Nickel Hockstead will be there for now. I agree. But, oh, God, I think Metcalf he is criminally underrated. I think that he is definitely going to push his way into this team. I think it's going to be at fullback. I think they're going to keep SJ at 7. I think they're going to keep Tamari Martin at 6. I think that Luke Metcalf's probably going to take the 1. And I'd probably have Nickel Clockstad at centre. He's played really good at centre during the international games. I like him at centre. I think he'll have a really big impact there. And maybe even, like a Joey Manu role or a Tom Trbojevic origin role where he just roams and, you give him that freedom, sorry. I would have him at centre, to be honest, chance to clock start. What are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, look, I see where you're coming from. I just think that this the solidness of Chance, you know what you're going to get from him. And yeah, that Metcalf does have the X factor, but I just I like the fullback to be his best game here and his worst game here. So it's definitely something that for the Warriors, the first time they've got options in that jersey, it seems like.
Mm.
But yeah, I like Chance there. I think that's his best position. Um, and Metcalf, uh, it's just one of those things where he looks to get an opportunity at the Warriors, and I think he might just have to wait a little longer.
Mm. Um, Also, now, look, a big one for me, and this is one of the reasons I'd sort of have Chance at centre, mainly because, there's a lot of younger centres. I think that having a guy who's played at centre before consistently and at a high rate, like Chance the good clock start, a guy that's experienced in NRL as well, being in the centres, I think that would benefit the Warriors more than if they had, Viliami Vaila and Rocco Berry there again. Now, while those guys would do a great job, I think Chancellor Clockstad would be awesome there. And it gives, obviously, Luke Metcalf the freedom to come into that side as well. And it just makes the side look even more stacked on paper as well. So, look, I don't know. What are your thoughts on the centers this year? Who are your centers going into this year? Are you going with the young guns in Viliami Vaila and Rocco Berry?
Yeah, I think the fact that they've got those young players there, you'd probably rather. I would lean that way. Also, looking at the coach Andrew Webster, you look at the fullback he's worked with for the last 4 years, with it being Dylan Edwards, a very similar mold to a Chance. Um, he did a lot of the attack work um, with Penrith over the last couple of years. So it would be a change of his style a little bit to have someone like Metcalf back there. But like I said, he's an X factor, and they can go either way, and it'll strengthen their squad. In my opinion, I just think go with the tried and tested fullback first, and then if it doesn't work halfway through the year, maybe look to change it up.
Yeah, look, I agree. I agree. I think I'd probably go down the same avenue. I'd probably have Chance at centre again. Um, would you consider playing near Corey at centre, or do you think it's just not worth it? Do you think that they can't afford it, or it's just not going to work?
Nah, they've signed him to be their hitman in the middle. Well, in my opinion, that's where he belongs in this side. That's why they would have brought him in. So if they need to, like Parramatta did, push him out on an edge, I'm sure um, they'll do it if they have to, with injuries and whatnot. But no, just not quite yet. He's their man in the middle, their leader, and want to move him to the edge.
All right, we'll talk about the halves now. Tamale Martin and Sean Johnson. Is that the way you see it going for the rest of the year? Or, do you see maybe one of these guys, maybe a cheeky prediction, maybe one of them falls out during the year?
I think this is where Metcalf makes his way on the side in the sixth jersey. Um, and I think, unfortunately, Johnson, he's just hasn't performed over the last couple of years, and I think he may make way for someone like Metcalf to come in and play six. I think Martin has the capabilities to play seven, and you saw how they worked together in the first trial, albeit against a bunch of kids, which were rolled out. They've shown that they can play together, and they do have the ability to do so. I think they'll definitely start with Johnson, but if they're not where they want to be after say 10 rounds, this is where I think Metcalf makes his way on the side, and I've got him around the six halfway through the season.
Very interesting. Very interesting. We'll have to see how the halves pairing shapes up going into this year for the New Zealand Warriors. I think that it's going to be Tamale Martin and Sean Johnson. I don't know if they're going to boot SJ that easy. I don't know. It'll be very interesting to see. But as I said, your new coach probably not afraid to make sacrifices in this team as well for success. Jackson Ford He's a guy I've been keen to talk about. He's a gun coming from the Dragons, where dreams die, maybe, but he might have been happy there. If he was at the West Tigers, you don't know how that would have gone. But all jokes aside, Jackson Ford coming into this New Zealand Warriors outfit. What are your thoughts on him going into this year? He's an absolute gun on that edge for the Warriors, and in those trials, he was great.
Yeah, it's a solid pickup. I think that the fact that what you look for in an edge back rower or a bench middle is someone who can do a role, who can be defensively solid, and with the ball, carts it forward and just works and works and works, and that's what Jackson Ford does. So anytime you can pick up a player like that and put him into your side, you're obviously benefiting. So it's a solid pickup. There's not much more to say for me. That he may go to another level, he may not, but it's someone that you can sort of rely on to do a job.
Yeah, I agree, mate. You know what you're going to get from him each week. And yeah, as you said, solid pick up there. We'll go through some of the key losses here. Obviously, Cody Nikorima left during 2022 to go to the South Sydney Rabbitohs. He's now at the Dolphins. Matt Lodge left to go to the Sydney Roosters during the year. Still at the Sydney Roosters. Not sure if he's got a top 30 contract yet, though. I haven't heard anything to suggest otherwise. So I'm a bit 50-50 on that. Obviously, Jesse Arthur's left. We talked about him going back to the Brisbane Broncos. Ewan Aiken, obviously the Dolphins. Losing Reece Walsh for the New Zealand Warriors. Talk to me. Talk to me about that loss for them and how big of an impact that's going to have on them going into this year.
Look, I don't think it'll have as big as an impact as people are thinking, only because we just spoke about probably for about 10 minutes that they're sort of not debate their headaches in the fullback position and in the key positions in their spine. So you have Walsh there. That's another headache that they have. So I think they identified that Reece probably was heading back to Australia, and that was going to happen. And whilst they had him for that short period of time, he showed glimpses and he performed well in a Warriors jersey. The fact he's now no longer there, they'll miss his brilliance and they'll miss that. They'll miss his attacking best. But as I've said over the last 10 minutes, I think if it is Nickel Klostad that wears the one, they've got a solid player there who will do a job week in, week out, and control that defensive unit. And then if they put Metcalf back there, they've got the X factor of Reece Walsh anyway. So I think it'll be. I don't think it'll be as big as a loss as people are thinking. I don't know where you sit on it, but it's sort of what I'm thinking.
Yeah, no, mate, I'm inclined to agree. I think it depends on maybe when they get to about round 10, as you were saying, what happens with SJ, what happens with Tomato Martin, and what happens with Luke Metcalf, obviously with Chance as well, if he stays at fullback. It really depends what happens in the next 2 to 3 months, mate. Round 1 hasn't even happened yet. We haven't seen these guys play. So we don't know how much of a loss he's going to be until maybe mid-year. But look, it'll be an interesting one. It'll be an interesting one. We saw how good he was for Brisbane. And to be honest, how comfortable he was in the Brisbane jersey as well compared to, his time at the Warriors. And I know it was only a trial, but he looked, for me at least, a lot more comfortable. But yeah, look, it'll be very interesting to see how this spine shapes up and, if they are going to be a contender going into next year. Some of the other guys as well worth mentioning before we move on to the Sharkies. Alicia Katoa, he's gone to the Melbourne Storm. Fuck, he is an absolute freak. He gives me Jeremiah Nanai vibes, and he debuted before Nanai as well. Talk to me about Alicia Katoa and his impact he's going to have at Melbourne, and look how much of a loss he's going to be for this New Zealand outfit.
Yeah, he's going to be phenomenal for Melbourne. I mentioned it when we did the Melbourne preview. This is one of the signings which makes me most excited for this year, someone like him with his ability going into that Melbourne system is just going to go to another level. Um, and people are going to look back and look at why the Warriors sort of let him go. I think it's going to be that Melbourne have just done another masterclass with their coaching. Yeah, he's gonna go to an absolute another level this season. You even saw it in the trial and the brief glimpses that we got. Yeah, he was phenomenal, and he is gonna kill it at Melbourne.
Yeah, no, I agree, man. I think he's going to be fantastic over at Melbourne, and a bit of a loss for the Warriors as well. Looking at this losses list, particularly the bottom end of the losses list, but also, you guys like Matt Lodge. Well, obviously there was, dramas there, but we won't talk about that. But Matt Lodge, Alicia Katoa, Aaron Penne, Jack Murchie, Ben Murdoch-Masila, Demarnus Louis. Demarnus Louis hasn't been mentioned whatsoever. He's been released from the club. I think he's playing for the Dolphins juniors side, the Redcliffe side, this season, where he played, I think, a few years back before he obviously signed with the Raiders and then obviously with New Zealand. But no one's talked about it. He's been released as well. They've lost a few forwards here in this side. That's going to hurt them going into this year. I know they've got guys like Mitch Barnett, who we haven't even talked about either, Martin Corey, Jackson Ford. They've got some guys coming in. Obviously, Tohu Harris has been great last year, and some other forwards in this side as well, Addington Fanua Blakes. I think we talked for about 30 minutes about the spine, mate. I think the forwards is where they're going to struggle this year. Talk to me about how hard this forward pack's been hit.
Yeah, I think this is where the question marks with the Warriors sort of lie. You mentioned with how many losses that they've had and the gains. This is just all part of the roster overhaul that comes with the new coach. I think the fact that Andrew Webster's taken the head coaching role. If we look at, and it's probably unfair to compare the two, if you look at, we'll talk about the Bulldogs later, but Serrato and Webster, you probably think Serrato's in front of Webster in terms of his roster. And this is the challenge for Webster to he's got this roster here and it's slowly building and to take that to another level. It's going to take a little bit of coaching to get it done.
Yeah, no, I agree, mate. I can totally agree. Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how this side ends up and how the forward pack sort of molds together as well. Talk to me about where you see this side on the ladder. Give us a bit of a rundown as to, all the factors and where you sort of see this team ending up this year.
Look, the Warriors, they're so hard to predict. I just can't see them. I just think I have too many teams who have improved, who are going to improve this season ahead of them. That I can't see them finishing anywhere but sort of towards that bottom four, and it's not the lack of sort of. I think they'll be an exciting team to watch this season, but I just think too many teams around them have made leaps and have jumped in front of them.
Yep, I totally agree. Yeah, I've got them about 9th to 17th. Like, I've got them in the whole bracket. I think it's going to be very interesting to see where they do end up. I really do. I think it's going to take them a while to sort of get used to that pack. I think it's going to take them a very long while to get used to that pack. The back line is something that I'm quite concerned about as well. But in terms of the spine, I think the spine's the thing that's going to keep them going. I've got them, yeah, 9th to 17th, mate. I've got them in that whole bracket because they could just miss out for me. I don't think they make the 8 this year. I think they could just miss out. They're one of those teams, the comp has evened out a bit, but they all could also be at the bottom end, mate, towards, where the Dolphins could end up as well. And, and where the Dragons may end up. We'll talk about that a bit later as well. But Yeah, very, very interesting going into this year, mate. Very, very interesting. We'll talk about the doggies. I nearly forgot about the doggies. I tell you that for free. Nearly forgot about the doggies, but I didn't. Um, yeah, look, they've got some big signings coming in. The big one for me that I am super excited about is Reed Marnie. Fuck, he's had an introduction into this team. He has been outstanding. Those trials, outstanding. His passing game, his kicking game out of dummy half, he brings obviously from Parramatta. Talk to me about Reed Marnie. For me, mate, I reckon signing of the year.
Can I do you one better with signing of the year
Mm.
in this club? Cameron Serrato. Um, Cameron Serrato is going to win Coach of the Year this year. He is going to take this club um, to another level. I don't know if you've been seeing it, Les, but there's the Canterbury media team. They've been releasing a doco every fortnight, and just the way he goes about building a culture, building um, an attitude around team first, individual second. It's just, it's fantastic to see. I'm very envious of the Dogs that they were able to get his signature. And I think even the doco that was released on Nine Now will show um, just how much the players love someone like Cameron Serrato. He gets everyone to buy in and believe, and um, you know, I think he'll be the signing of the year. But you asked me a question around Reed Marnie, just service phenomenal, defense phenomenal, and one of the best kickers out of nine. He was phenomenal in that trial. He's gone straight. He's been at the club for a little under a couple of months, probably about 4 months, and he's the co-club on-field captain alongside Matt Burton. He's got leadership, and he's got a great game, which is ready to go to another level. If you think of Reed Marnie, you probably think um, he's probably ready for an Origin debut. Just unlucky to be stuck behind Harry Grant and Benny Hunt in that position of nine. And I would not be surprised if he's making a debut for Queensland this season because he's fantastic.
Now, this is going to be a big mind fuck for anyone listening, especially Queensland fans. But let's go down this little road here, this little scenario. Say Manly don't kick on this year, Turbo gets injured, Manly just don't play well. DCE's out, Ben Hunt moves to 7. That leaves that 14 jersey open. Obviously, Harry Grant would go to 9. Does Reed Marnie get the debut?
I'll do you one better. Even if Manly are performing, Ben Hunt plays 7. I think he should have played 7 last year, even though they won the series. I think Ben Hunt's the best 7 Queensland has to offer. So if I'm looking at Queensland to pick a side, I'll go Ben Hunt at 7, Reed Marnie at 9, and Harry Grant off the bench at 14.
Big call. Big call. Harry Grant still off the bench with Reed Marnie. I don't know if I'd go that far. I would probably say Reed Marnie would maybe at least play the first game on the bench. Harry Grant, he does have a great impact off the bench, though. We've seen it from World Cup. We've seen it from Origin. Yeah, look, it'd be interesting. It'd be very interesting. That's a big call, bro, as well. I was just going down the theoretical road, but he's come out with some big calls, Hayden, mate. Nothing less from the True Blue Sporting Podcast. I'll tell you that right now.
That's what we're in the business for.
Yeah. Look, no, mate, I agree. To be honest, I agree. I think that that scenario comes into play. We could see Reed Marnie grabbing that jersey. I'm keen. I'm super keen. I'm keen to see if you're right as well. Another thing we've got to remember here, and obviously he had a blinder, so it's hard for us to sort of go down this road of looking down. But Marnie's still coming into a new team with a new spine. It's going to take anyone quite a while to sort of get used to that. The fact that he's played that well as well in a trial with a completely new spine blows me off blows my mind. But yeah, look, I'm interested to see how he goes. I'm interested to see how he goes if he can really jolt fast like he's doing at the moment with this spine and play some good football. Fuck, he could do anything, Reed Marnie. He could do anything. Hayes Perham coming into the side from Parramatta as well. Fuck, I don't know. I don't know. He had a great game for the All Stars game. I thought he, and this is a bit controversial, but I thought he outplayed the Trell in terms of fullbacks in that game. But yeah, that trial, I wasn't overly impressed. Is he still your fullback, or are you going to go down the road of Averillo, keep Averillo there, don't fix something that isn't broken sort of route?
I think you leave Perham there, and it's to future proof the squad. To allow Averillo to have a full year at centre, because you know when Crichton comes to the club that he's the fullback. That's why he's been signed there. He's been signed there to play fullback. Whether he can do it or not, that's a different question. But that's where they believe that he's the answer at fullback. Leaving Perham there, I think you mentioned that he had a fantastic game in the All Stars game, but then sort of struggled a little bit at in that second trial. It's a trial at the end of the day. The points don't matter. Give him time to improve in that position. Give him time to gel, as you said, with his spine player, other spine members. I just wouldn't be making a snap rash decision over one trial, especially if that's what you've been training for all summer.
Man, I'm going to get butchered here. I'm going to get absolutely butchered. But even with Crichton coming in next year, like if I was building a team and I had to pick between Averillo or Crichton as my fullback, I'd pick Averillo and I'd have Crichton at centre. I don't think he's a fullback. I think that he's played all right in some games there. Most games I've seen him there, I haven't been too overly impressed, especially in the World Club Challenge. I thought he was ordinary. Yeah, look, I would still pick Averillo. I think that Crichton has been ordinary there when he has come in at fullback. Yeah, it's an interesting one. Are you in the same sort of frame of mind, or are you confident that Crichton's a fullback moving forward?
Yeah, look, I think that's a conversation for next year. I think the fact that they've definitely signed him to play fullback. Whether do I think he can play fullback? I think he's still got a little way to go in terms of his ability at fullback. That's not saying he can't get there. I just think there's a little few attributes which need a little bit of improving in order to play week in and week out at fullback. He's definitely got that natural ability to play out the back. So I think he definitely start, and there's that's 12 months down the track. Who knows what can happen before then? But you get the word out of the Dogs, and people are saying he's their man at fullback. And there's always this question about fullback money, and is he on centre money? Is he on fullback money? He'd probably say he's on fullback money with what he's getting paid. So probably have him starting and leaving Averillo to grow and develop, and not make the mistake they have previously with Averillo.
Mate, I don't know. I don't know. I think he's more of a fullback, Averillo. I think that Stephen Crichton's more of a centre too. It's going to be hard to get my head around, but I'm going to have to see it, obviously, next year to sort of believe it. I'm more of a see it, believe it type of guy. Yeah, it's going to be interesting, mate. Really interesting to see the avenue they go down. I am very, very adamant on Kyle Flanagan. We'll talk about that in a second. But two, I'm quite adamant on Averillo at fullback. I think that he killed it at the end of last year. It's when they looked at their best. It's when they were winning games as well. Oh, I think that. Yeah, I really do think that Averillo is the goal at fullback. But anyway, differing opinions there. See how we go. See what happens later on in the year. Viliami Kikau. What a weapon. What a signing. What a signing. And we saw, obviously, when we commentated, well, obviously it didn't come out, but when we commentated the Penrith and St. Helens game, we sort of spoke about and we saw the loss of Viliami Kikau, the effects of that. They weren't as strong on their edges. They really weren't. Um, Talk to me about Viliami Kikau coming into this dog side. Obviously, scored a try in the trials. Talk to me about the impact he's going to have on this team this year.
Yeah, I think it's a great signing. It adds spark to that already damaging left edge. I will come back with you, come back to you with a question here. I saw Cooper Cronk mention potentially playing kick out on the right, just to give Flanagan a little bit of, that left edge is already humming with the likes of Burton and Fox. Do you look to move kick out to the right to give Flanagan a weapon, or do you leave him on the left? What do you think?
They've got so many options that I don't think it would matter too much for me. Now, I think that, look, if I'm picking on whether Viliami Kikau is playing on the left or right, I think he's much better as a left back rower. But they've got so many options. Jackson Topine. They've got, Luke Thompson, who can play on the edge. I think he'll definitely stay in the middle, but he can play on the edge. They've got, plenty of options there. Andrew Davey as well. Tavita Pangai Jr. I know he's been confirmed to play in the middle, but he's an option there.
Fatala Mariner.
Yeah. Raymond Fatala Mariner as well. They've got so many options there. I think that it's not going to matter too much, but I think he's a better left back rower. But as I said, I think the X factor is still going to be there either way. Like, could you imagine Burton, TPJ, or Raymond Fatala Mariner? And then obviously, I reckon it'll be Alamotti. And then I think Adokar. I mean, that's pretty full on for any team to go up against. And then the other side, you'd have Flano, Kikau, and then you'd have Avarillo and Jacob Braz. Fuck. Isn't that just insane? Like, that's just, that's crazy. The side that they've got. So either way, they've got strike on both sides. I actually think as well that Kikau being on the right is going to help Kyle Flanagan fuck tons in terms of defense on that side as well. He's a great defensive halfback, but having Kikau next to him is going to really shore him up as well. And give Flano a bit of strike there as well. Build up a combination with Kikau. I think that'd be unreal. But as right as Cooper Cronk has been in the past, they played him on the left in the trials. I think they're going to stick with Viliami Kikau out in the left to start the year as well. So look, anything can happen, but I think it's not going to affect them too much. Ryan Sutton from Canberra, gun, weapon. Love him coming into this side. I think he's one of their better signings as well. If I'm ranking signings here, it'd be Reed Marnie, Viliami Kikau, Ryan Sutton. I think he's an absolute gun, and I think he's going to do shit tons for this side in terms of, really bringing back the dogs of war mentality. And there's another dog of war here we'll talk about in a second. But Ryan Sutton, give me a rundown on what you think about this signing.
Yeah, it shores up their middle third of the field. It adds a lot of depth there as well. And, the way that the Bulldogs are going at the moment, they're transitioning back to that dogs of war. They're reconnecting with their culture, reconnecting with the past champions of the club. Only yesterday, Sonny Bill Williams was back at Belmore. And as you said, he fits that mold. So it's a real Canterbury signing.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And then, Franklin Pele adding on to that. Holy shit. I can't believe the Sharks let him go. Like, that blew me away when I saw this one. The fact that the Sharkies let this guy go blows my mind. Blows my mind that they let this guy go. They did get a young forward back, I believe, for Lockie Miller when Lockie Miller went to Newcastle. But still, like, losing a guy like Franklin Pele, who got told, and listen to this, I think you've heard this one before, but I'll tell you anyway, and I'll tell the people listening as well, got told to leave the gym because he was putting on too much size. Like, talk about weapon. Talk about absolute dead set weapon. Like, usually that's what they usually tell me. Then at Womby's training, they say, Les, just stop, mate. You're putting on too much size. You're looking too good, mate. It's enough. And I say it's all right. It's just what we do. But Yeah, no, Franklin Pele, talk to me about this signing. Absolute legend, an absolute weapon as well.
Yeah, it's as you said, he's a big boy, a very very big boy. So, um, he's going to have a lot of power. The question is how many valuable minutes they can get out of him, and that's the test for Serrato. And as I said, I think any test that's going to come his way this year, he's gonna pass with flying colours. So that yeah, he just needs to um, sort of use his power and use his strength and maximize how much time he actually spends on the field. It's all good looking, looking big and looking menacing is all good, but if you're not maximizing that time you're on the field, then what's the point?
Okay, so we've talked about the gains here, especially the main ones. Josh Reynolds as well. We'll touch on Josh Reynolds because I think if I left that out, I'd get absolutely destroyed by every single Bulldogs fan ever. The Josh Reynolds coming back to the Bulldogs. Talk about narrative, mate. Talk about narrative. It was the saddest day on planet Earth for Bulldogs fans when he played his last game. Obviously, a few years back now, but coming back into this team, getting the top 30 contract, mate, narrative. Absolutely awesome narrative. Talk to me about Josh Reynolds coming back into this side, and is he a 14?
Um, yeah, look, if you think of players that belong at clubs, you think of Marshall and the Tigers. Smith and Melbourne. You know, Reynolds and the Bulldogs fit into that category. He is worshipped as a god at Belmore. If you ask any Canterbury Bulldogs supporter who their favourite signing of this group is, it'll be Josh Reynolds. They are the reception he got coming onto the field at Belmore in their last trial was goosebumps. It was fantastic to see that one player can have such an impact at a club. And he's a Canterbury Bulldog through and through. And although he did come to the West Tigers, you felt like you were robbing the Bulldogs a little bit of a cult hero. And now he's back there, for those guys, all is well in the world. He's back there, and I think he has done enough to win the 14 jersey and to start the season, just for his energy alone, his passion for the jersey. So I'm really excited to see how Reynolds goes this season. I think he'll add a lot to their culture.
Yeah, mate, totally. I think that as you said, a cult hero in Josh Reynolds coming back to the side. It's going to be insane. Before we touch on these losses now, I just want to touch on. I'm not sure if you know this, mate, and I'm sure there's a bunch of guys that listen to this podcast that probably don't know it either, but I post about him all the fucking time. There's a guy that's come into the training system. He's been training with the boys for the past few weeks. Peter Breen. Now, he used to play rugby union, a little bit for Super Rugby, but he manufactures his own kicking tees, and he actually trains guys like Aaron Smith, who's quite popular in the rugby union franchise. About passing, kicking games. He was working with the Melbourne Storm last year. You would have probably seen it on their page. He was teaching Munster and Jerome Hughes how to kick, and he was teaching Harry Grant how to pass with the rubber bands and everything. You probably would have seen it during the year, but he's come to the Bulldogs and he's working with all of the players, not just the halves, but all of the players. I think that is a big balls move by Serraldo. I think it's going to pay off really well, especially when you look at the spine and the team that they have going into this year. Getting a guy who's worked with a top dog franchise like the Melbourne Storm coming in, I think that's going to be great. Passing games with the forwards as well. I think it opens up the doorway for any of the forwards really to play in that lock forward role. Obviously, that Josh Jackson is left behind. Obviously, when he's come and retired, and we'll talk about that in a second as well. But I just wanted to make mention there of Peter Breen and the work that he has been doing with the boys, and I think that's going to be a massive one. But yeah, Josh Jackson retiring. Talk about cult heroes, mate. This guy was a fucking god number two, mate. If Josh Reynolds was the king, he would be the right hand man. He would be one of the top knights in that royal family, mate. He'd be one of the princes for sure. Who gets the 13 jersey in this Bulldogs team?
I, you mentioned it earlier. They've given the word that Tavita's going to play a lot in the middle. I think you let him go mayhem in that 13 jersey. And maybe it's a little bit different to how other teams view the 13 jersey and get a ball player stuck in there, but just let him put the 13 jersey on and just rip. Um, you know, be the impact, be the hitman, be Tavita, and that's but be Tavita in a system and be Tavita in a way that you can maximize your time on the field through suspensions and whatnot. If you talk about Tavita Pangai Jr. and when he played his best footy, I'd look to that stretch where he was at Penrith, and who was at Penrith at that time? Cameron Serrato. And I know it's probably looking like, I'm Cameron Serrato's biggest cheerleader at the moment. But I just think he can, if there's anyone that can get the best out of him, it is Cameron Serrato, and it is because we've seen him produce in a Penrith jersey before, and the influence that he had there was, second to none, if not only the coach. And I've got my own opinions about that, but that's a conversation for a different day. But I think Tavita's the one that gets the license at 13.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting, mate. I've seen on a lot of predicted teams, especially your Fox leagues and your NRL and 9 and some of the major pages when they are predicting 1 to 17. So that Luke Thompson is the guy that's playing 13 for them. But look, it'll be very interesting to see. I agree having a mongrel in the 13. I don't mind it because it is very different and unpredictable there, having Tavita Pangai Jr. play there as well. So be interesting to see who they do put there. Now, mate, talk about the Warriors and Andrew Webster having a clean out. Take a listen to this losses column here for the Doggies. Brett Naden, West Tigers. Matt Duffy, Warrington Wolves. Jeremy Marshall-King, Dolphins. Jack Hetherington, Newcastle. Paul Vaughan, Warrington. By the way, ran for 174 meters in his first. I think it was 274 meters in his first game for the Warrington Wolves. For Paul Vaughan. I'm blown away there. Anyway, Paul Vaughan, Warrington Wolves. Joe Stimson, Aaron Shop, Gold Coast Titans. Matt Dory, Parramatta Reels. Corey Allen, Sydney Roosters. Brandon Wakeham, West Tigers. Hayden, Sumanu Fagai. Josh Cook, Reese Hoffman. Tuipulotu Katoa, all released. Josh Jackson retired. That is probably the biggest losses column that there is going into this year. However, I think it's one of the teams that could slide their way into the 8. And I think that they're going to be very, very successful going into this year. First year with a new spine, but very successful. Little report before we go into where we think the Bulldogs are going to be on the ladder this year. Kyle Flanagan declares he's in for a big year. And this reminds me of the roster of 2020 for the Sydney Roosters. We look back, Kyle Flanagan, Luke Keary, James Tedesco, Victor Radley, Boyd Cordner was still there. Friendy was still there. He had a great team and he performed very, very well. A lot of X factor around him. Joey Manu as well. Going into this year, he's got a few really decent backs around him. Karaz will be on his side. We talked about this edge before. Avarillo and Kyle Flanagan combination. Keen to see that. And Viliame Kikau potentially. Or, Raymond Fatalamarana, whatever direction they go down. Holy shit. Kyle Flanagan, is he in for a big year, Hayden? Is he in for a big year this year with the Dogs?
I hope so. Because if there's two players under the most pressure any game they go in to step on a field, it's Luke Brooks and it's Kyle Flanagan. I don't see any players that cop the slack that these two do. These two get. Flanagan has been a scapegoat for everywhere he's been. I think the treatment he got towards the end of his time at the Roosters was poor from a club who really don't do that to their players. When he was signed by the Bulldogs for the first time, he was viewed as the savior, the the first signing of the rebuild. He'll be the man to take them out of that hole. But if you look at it, he was given nothing to work with. Then last season, at the start of preseason, he played a couple of minutes in a trial. It didn't look like he was anywhere near the first grade side. And then he came in at the back end of last season and played some solid footy. So I just hope for his sake that this year, with a little bit of strike around him, that he can just go back to being Kyle Flanagan. And I've read that's what he's looking to do. He just wants to be Kyle Flanagan and play that style and play like he did when he was coming through the ranks. Because I think people forget very quickly that the raps that were on Kyle Flanagan when he first came to the grade, and I'd hate to see his career pan out very similarly to the way that Luke Brooks's has.
Yeah, mate, I agree. I think it has to be a big year for Kyle Flanagan this year. I think it will be, and particularly because of reason number 8 here, the Sydney Roosters in 2020 and the side that he had around him, and then comparing that to the side he has around him this year, I think that he's got to go well. He's got to go well. Otherwise, he's going to cop it. And he's probably going to get dropped again. But I think the luck's on his side in terms of, and you might disagree with me here a little bit, but I think he's got a little bit of luck with him, considering that they don't have much depth in the halves if he does go out. I think the best they could probably do if he does get dropped at the end of the day is probably Averillo at 7. And I don't think they're going to go down that road again. So, yeah, I think that's something that's probably actually another reason he has to really work out. They've got a guy in reserve grade, obviously, that they've signed from Brisbane in Kyle Olawapu. But I haven't seen much of him, to be honest, so I can't really talk about how he would come into this side. And Josh Reynolds as well, obviously, at the 14 jersey. Other than that, they haven't got much depth there in the halves. So I think that's, I guess, one of the things he has got behind him, but I think he has to play well regardless. It has to be a big year for Kyle Flanagan. It has to be. Otherwise, we probably won't hear his name again. Where do you see the Bulldogs, mate? Where's your bracket for them going into this year? Mine would be 6th to 12th.
Yeah, they definitely improved from where they were. They probably take another step forward from 12th, where they finished last year. But I've got them just missing out on the 8th, and that would be due to maybe a little bit of bias, but we'll get into that later.
Yeah, fair enough, mate. Yeah, look, I mean, I think that having a guy like Reid Marnie and William kick out there, plus you got the back line, plus a bunch of other factors like Matt Burton, I think their spine is pretty much too good not to maybe just make the 8 this year for me. So 6th to 12th is where I see them. Obviously, 12th is where they finished last year, as you said before, but I think they are taking a step forward, and that's probably 6th to 12th for me. I'm going to move on to a side that is very interesting going into this year, and a lot of dramas. A lot of dramas. The Dragons, mate. Fuck Ben Hunt. He's under a shit ton of pressure going into this year. A shit ton. We talked about scenarios and who could miss out on Origin. Fuck, the amount of pressure this guy is going to have on him, it is going to take a toll. It is going to take a toll. He's in his 30s now, I think. And he has to deal with, obviously, Amone being out this year. Cody Ramsey, unfortunately, succumbing to a disease which has, ended his season quite early. Fuck, they're under a lot of pressure. Sloan, under more pressure than ever as well. But Ben Hunt especially, mate, talk about the pressure that Ben Hunt is going to be in going into this year.
Yeah, look, their hopes ride on Benny Hunt. There's no doubt about that. That the season of the Dragons, how successful it is, or how or whether they struggle or not, it is dependent on how he goes. You saw last year he basically carried that side. finishing second in the Dally M medal, so he can do it. But yeah, look, I look at the Dragons and I just don't see anything. I see a very, very long season for their supporters. And yeah, it's not looking good.
Isn't it funny though? Now, I've got very strong opinions that they'll probably get the spoon this year, but isn't it funny though? We were saying the exact same thing, maybe not to the extent of, but the exact same thing about the Cowboys last year, and they got very, very deep into finals, which is fucking hilarious for me and super ironic. Um, but yeah, no, look, the Dragons, fucking hell, it does not look good. Now, a big question for me, obviously, it's going to be a big year for Ben Hunt. Jacob Little coming into this team, is he an 80-minute hooker? And look, for me, no. But who else have they got to come in and play that role off the bench other than Moses Mbye?
No, he's not an 80-minute hooker. I think we've seen that with his time at the Tigers, potentially as Sullivan, maybe to play a little bit of 9, but he may have to play 6 with the Monet going. So that's another question mark, really. There's just so many question marks with St. George at the moment that are unanswered. And I just think, yeah, Little coming in, well, he's a solid player. Don't get me wrong, he can do a job, but I just don't doubt whether he can do one for 80 minutes and do it consistently.
Yeah, totally, mate. Oh, I'm super worried. So fucking worried because, yeah, as I said, the next best thing at the moment that they have is Moses Mbye. And I don't think he's up for it just quietly. I think Moses Mbye is past his, time when he was fantastic. I think he's well past that time on the wrong side of 30. Just don't think that he's that guy. So Little, I think, to be quite fair, to be quite honest, will probably struggle this year. Now, they do have a guy. Now, I don't know if he's still in the top 30 or if he even is still at the club. His name escapes me, but he was a hooker for South Sydney. He debuted, I think, in 2019, played a season. He was there when Connor Tracy was there. They were the two guys that were really high wrapped.
Billy Britton.
Yes, Billy Britton. I'm not sure if he's still there, if he's still in that top 30. But if he is, probably could get a crack for me.
I don't think so.
You don't think he's still there?
No, I don't think he's still there.
Okay, that's a fucking shame. Yeah, no. Well, then I don't know. Then I don't know. It's quite concerning. Talk about the gains though. There is an upside. If we do want to talk positive about these teams, mate, if there is an upside here, Zane Musgrove, fucking mongrel, mate. He was awesome in that first trial that he played for this side. Awesome, and I think that if he gets up, you're losing a guy like George Burgess, who's obviously retired. Famusili went from the Chooks to St. George to the Dolphins. He's obviously gone too. Gozaweski from North Queensland. Jackson Ford gone. Maguire, the king of the mongrels. If there's a king of the mongrels, it's freaking Josh Maguire. He's gone as well. Tarek Sims gone. Alvaro also gone, playing for France now. I mean, they've lost a lot of guys in the forwards, but if Zane Musgrove gets up, I'm not too worried. I'm not too worried as I am if he doesn't get up, to be honest. They've signed a lot of guys who are aging forwards, which is a bit concerning. The fact that they were looking at Sione Katoa, who is obviously the winger for the Cronulla Sharks at the moment. They're sort of looking into him a little bit. Don't think they'll get him just quietly with the current state of the club. Yeah, but look, if Zane Musgrove gets up, they're going to go well. Talk to me about Zane Musgrove.
He's obviously come from the Tigers, watched his progress over the last couple of years, with a keen eye, and it's one which has promise in it, and that it does show glimpses, but it's just whether he can, one, with injury, stay on the field, and two, with suspension, stay on the field. They're the two sort of question marks around Musgrove in his game. But yeah, no, he's got the capabilities to be a menacing forward in this competition. There's no doubt about that. Just whether he can produce it, and that's the question. With a lot of these players at St George, they've got the question marks around them, and you know, I know it's a bad place to be, but you know, if you're at St George and your back's against the wall, it's a good place to be. No one's giving you a chance, and as a group, you got a big opportunity to sort of get a siege mentality going, and really just say it's us against the world. No one's giving us a chance. Let's give it a real crack and see how we go. But I just yeah, I don't know with St George this year. I think this is their year to finally get that spoon.
Yeah, mate. As much as I don't want to say it, I'm gonna have to agree. I'm gonna have to agree. St George is just not their year this year. Murdoch Masilla, again, we talked about the theme of aging forwards here. They've got a guy called Nick Louis Toso, who's from Northern Pride. I hear some things about him. Haven't watched him at all, so I can't comment on him. But Murdoch Masilla, again, aging forward, wrong side of 30. That theme there of getting those aging forwards in. But you know what, mate? I don't mind this signing in particular because we were talking about, how this side's going to shape up. Paul Turner from the Gold Coast Titans can play halfback, play 5'8", play centre. He can slot into places, mate. I think that gives them an option there for that 6 jersey. If, Sullivan does end up playing that 14 role off the bench, playing or even starting at 9, and you have Little playing off the bench at 9, it gives them options. This signing gives them options, and it frees them up a little bit. Do you see, Paul Turner being in this starting side?
Um, I think probably Moses starts the year at 6. Little starts the year at 9, so probably not starting the year. But if they need a circuit breaker or someone to come in, he's there and he's the next one available for them. I just don't think starting the year. They'll go with Turner, considering he only joined the club only
2 days ago.
recently.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2 days
3
ago.
days
So
ago, yeah.
to start the year is probably a bit too big of a stretch, but definitely someone handy to have to come in and to impact the side if they need a circuit breaker and a ball of energy.
Yeah, totally, mate. And as I said, gives them options. Gives them options going into this year. Um, Talk about 2 losses here in particular, because we sort of touched on most of the other guys. Tarek Sims. Holy heckers, mate. What a loss. What a loss for this team. He was fantastic. Fantastic for them. Sort of starting to get into a groove. Obviously, then dropped out a bit, and we started to get in a groove, then dropped out a bit. They moved him around a little bit, had him in the middle, then had him back on the edge. Then he wasn't even in the team at some points. Like, it's a roller coaster of a year for Tarek Sims, and then to now be in the Melbourne Storm system will be fantastic for him and be great in terms of development. Even though that he's nearly 30, think in terms of development it'll be great for him. But Tarek Sims, talk to me about the loss that of him coming out of this side and going to Melbourne.
Yeah, it's one that which doesn't make sense. I don't understand why they would let him go out the door. Yeah, I just sort of don't understand it from a St George perspective. The only reason I can is if it was due to salary cap constraints. But if you look at who they've got, there's not really anyone who besides Ben Hunt, which would be on decent money. So yeah, it's one which really I'm baffled at, and I don't understand why he was let go. Obviously, doesn't get along with the coach potentially, not playing first grade as often as he would have wanted to last year. So he's got to take an opportunity somewhere else. But yeah, it doesn't make sense having a state of origin player leave the club.
Yeah, totally, mate. And one of the leaders in the team as well. One of the main guys. You think Dragons, you think Tarek Sims. And the fact that he's leaving, the fact that he's at Melbourne now, it looks fucking weird in a Melbourne jersey. Tell you that for free. That, it did not look right for me. Sort of had hard to get used to it a little bit before I warmed up to it. But yeah, fuck, it's a big loss for them. And then we talked about the King Mongrel in Josh Maguire. Like, tell me about this loss. Now, obviously, he was suspended a little bit during the year, but he fucking got this side up, particularly when they were looking for a nine as well during the year. And he stepped in and played a little bit of hooker and then went back into the front row. Talk to me about Josh McGuire and the loss. I think he is a substantial loss for me because we talked about who is going to be the main guy on this forward pack, and he was pretty much for them. But obviously, when he was suspended, I thought that he was awesome for them, and a key mongrel in that team, and something they did need, even though a veteran, they needed a mongrel. So, talk to me about Josh McGuire as a loss.
Yeah, I don't see it as a loss. Um, Spending a lot of time on the sideline, and was probably transitioning out of first grade as well. So in a scheme of sorry, if we're looking at it in terms of around training, yeah, it's a loss, but I'd rather have the younger players at St George have the opportunity than rather than giving games to Josh Maguire just because he's a veteran. I just think the game was moving in a different direction, um, and the move to the Super League and over to England is the best thing for him as well.
Yeah, oh, look, I mean, I can agree, but at the same time, mate, they needed the mongrel. They needed the mongrel in that team. They needed someone to, especially in the forward pack, to just get up and fucking yell at people and hit hard and, run hard, even though a small bloke, even though an older guy, just a fucking mongrel. I think that it is a little bit of a loss for them. I think that their forward pack, to be honest, and no disrespect to the Dragons, is a bit melancholy now. I mean, other than Blake Laurie, I mean, it's quite melancholy, the forward pack now. And yeah, I think it's going to hurt. I think it's going to hurt not having a spine, not having a forward pack behind the spine that they do have for me, mate. And I think you can concur. Spoon this year for the Dragons. What are we thinking?
Yep, the spoon for St George, Hook to be sacked in 10 weeks, and by the end of it, by the start of next season, Dean Young and Ben Hornby will be back at the club.
There you go. Big calls by the H man, the True Blue Sporting Podcast, mate. This is why he's here for the big calls, mate. This is why he's here. Now the last team before we get to the big ladder prediction at the end, the Manly Seagulls, mate. What a team to finish on as well. The gains for this team: Kelmatulagi, Ben Condon, Cooper Johns. Now talk about Cooper Johns because his trials have been fucking unreal to the point where I'm almost considering moving Jake Travojevic to the front row. You move Schuster to 13 and you bring this guy in to play 6. Thoughts on that? Do you agree? Do you think he's going to be in the 17 at some stage?
Um, you say almost doing it, I'll be doing it right away. I think um, anyone who has watched a game of rugby league or while Cooper Johns has been on the field with me knows that I rate his ability. And that's just not because of the last name. I think he's got very good um, sort of ball playing ability. He's a very good playmaker. Um, and I think that he is going to be a long term half for Manly, and the move back to Manly is going to do his career the world of good. I think Schuster wasn't overly impressive at the 6, and that his frame enables him to play 13 and would handle it comfortably. And then Jake Trebojevic is a competitor who will just kill it wherever you put him. You could put him at fullback and he'll do a job. So, yeah, I think it's a move that I'd strongly be considering, and I'd be making the move. Schuster out for the first couple of weeks with a little calf strain. So Cooper Johns gets first crack at the 6. Uh, so it's just whether he takes that opportunity, and then based on the first 2 weeks, you look at the side and reassess from there.
Mate, I think yeah, I totally agree. I think it's yeah, Cooper John, see how he goes in that first crack. But me, in terms of Manly's success this year, there's two main factors. There's two main factors I think that are going to really determine how Manly go this year. The first one, Tom Trbojevich's fitness. Turbo's got to be in the team, whether it's at fullback or whether it's rumored to be at centre. I think he's got to be there. To ask you about that in just a second, but I think the second thing as well, you talked about this guy before, but Dylan Walker, how they recover from not having his leg speed, and just a guy like that coming off the bench. But first of all, Tom Trbojevic, how are you handling his return? Are you bringing him back straight away? So this is the sort of the three options that I would have for Tom Trbojevic. Obviously, Manly fans are keen to see him straight away back in the fullback jersey. That's number one. Obviously, at centre where he's been rumoured. For me, if I'm Anthony Seibold or Shane Flanagan, I would be starting him at 14, starting Ruben Garrick at fullback, and just slowly increasing Turbo's minutes, slowly bringing him back into this team. They're in no rush here. They're in no rush. I'm not saying Manly as a top 8 contender. I'm not saying Manly as some club that can push for a grand final. If Tom Trbojevic is fit, 100% they can do that. However, I'm not saying that that's the trajectory they're going this year. I'm more worried about Tom Trbojevic, how he comes back into this team, because if he's out for the remainder of this season, or he's out for extended periods, Manly will struggle. They will really, really struggle. Even though they've got a really good replacement fullback in Ruben Garrick, I feel like without Tom Trbojevic, they haven't got much else. So, firstly, how are you bringing Tom Trbojevic back? And then secondly, how many minutes are you giving Tommy Turbo?
As soon as Trbojevic is ready, I'd play him fullback. The Manly with Tom Trbojevic in the side are a premiership contender. Whether that's where we saw it in 2021, that season he had was phenomenal. When he is in the side and he's healthy and he's fit, they can win a premiership. And it will be a case of not looking to rush him back in, because I don't think that's the smartest idea as well. But when he is ready, the first week, he's your number one, he's your main man, and he goes into that fullback jersey. I don't see a move to centre being realistic. I don't see a move to 14. I don't think that makes sense. The way I see him, if he's fit to play centre, he's fit to play 14, he's fit to play fullback.
Are you playing him at reduced minutes? Obviously when the troll, was sort of coming back in, they sort of played him for about, or when he was transitioning into fullback, I should say, they sort of gave him 60, 70 minutes, sort of increased his minutes slowly, and then obviously brought on Taff. Do you see that sort of happening for Manly, or is it just 80 minutes?
No, I think 80 minutes at fullback. I think it's the only way that I think it's the only way Manly can be competitive is if Tom Trbojevic is playing 80 minutes at fullback. And I understand that you're looking after Trbojevic and that hamstring is everyone knows sort of the damage that it's had and how vulnerable it is and the importance to get it right.
Mm.
But if they're to do anything this season, he needs to be on the field. And if it's no Trbojevic, it's no Manly. And I think Manly supporters would rather maybe wait a couple extra weeks. If he doesn't come back right away, take a little bit of time with him. Don't rush him to play reduced minutes. We want the full Tom Trbojevic to play 80 minutes when he's ready. And if it's ready if he's ready to go 100% in round 10, rather than he's 60% in round 6, and we're going to slowly build him up, I think Manly supporters would go, we want him 100% at round 10.
So say he's like 70% in round one. You just playing Garrick at fullback?
What's the thing? If he's not 100%, I wouldn't play him, no.
Hmm. All
Because
right.
it's too risky. And the games at the start of the year, whilst they're important in setting up your season, you don't want Trebojevic to go down round one
Hmm.
with another hammy. It would just derail their season and it would derail his career once again.
But that's sort of my point, mate. Like I totally agree. Like he's got to be 100% to bring him back. But I think that while that's the case, if he's not playing football for 10 rounds and you bring him back in round 10, that's 10 rounds of match fitness that he's missed. You know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, I do get the point of, yes, wait till he's 100%. Totally agree. But I think you got to condition him as well, mate. You got to have him, whether that is, as I said before, made the point before, coming off the bench and playing 30, then 40, then 50, then 60, then 70, and then eventually 80 minutes. I think that if there is a way of bringing Turbo back, it's not straight away for 80 minutes, or it's not what keeping him out of the side until he is 100%, because you know not much fitness means not playing well. Sometimes not much fitness also means more chance of injury, high risk. It's very high risk, high reward, no matter what way you go about it. But I'd sort of be leaning towards, that slow bench sort of recovery rather than him not actually playing and then coming back and lacking that match fitness. Because then I think that then again he will probably get injured. Um, would you even consider, while he's not ready, playing him in reserve grade for a few weeks and, just letting him sort of play there in a bit of an, I would say, easier comp, and just let him sort of keep the match fitness, and then when he's 100%, move him back up to first grade? Or do you just think, keep him out?
I just think if he's ready to play, he plays first grade and he plays fullback.
Mm.
I can't see any other way to. I just would hate the idea of playing him off the bench at a 70% just to keep his match fitness up, and he goes down injured because he's not ready. I just think this recovery and the comeback from this injury is the most important out of all of them. He's tried so hard to get this one back that if it was to be rushed and rash decisions were to be made, and he's for like he's placed on minute restrictions, I just think it just runs the I believe an unnecessary risk. Um, and yeah, I think if he's 100%, he plays fullback, and I don't know. It's definitely something which they're gonna have to look into, and a big talking point moving forward for Manly.
Massive talking point, mate, and we'll see if he's named tomorrow. It's Team List Tuesday tomorrow, mate, so we'll see what happens tomorrow. We're recording this on Monday night, so we'll find out for sure tomorrow when this podcast does come out, what these sides do look like. But yeah, and look, very interesting talking point, mate. Very interesting. We'll quickly touch on the impact, or sorry, the loss of Dylan Walker in this side, and you know, what's the 14 jersey going to look like, mate, going into this year? Are you just chucking a forward there? Look, how is this going to change here? What's the what are they losing in Dylan Walker, and who takes the 14?
Um, well, as I said with Dylan Walker in the Warriors section, they're gaining a link from one half to another. His ball playing is fantastic. So they're going to miss that Manly. In terms of the 14 jersey, it's looking like it's going to be KO Weeks, which is going to get the start there, which I think is a good decision. I think he's got a lot of ability, and it's going to be interesting if he is played in a similar role. If you look at Seabold, he traditionally didn't really carry a 14. he liked carrying an extra sort of dummy half, or when he was at South, when he had Cook, he just ran with the four forwards on the bench. So that's another thing to consider. I would look at KO Weeks, but wouldn't be surprised if they named four forwards either.
Yeah, look, very interesting, mate. Kale Weeks, an absolute weapon. Last thing to talk about here for Manly before we go on to the ladder prediction for this year from both of us, mate. Kieran Foran. Fucking hell, this is a big loss here, and something not many people are talking about either. We're talking about who's going to take the sixth. We're not talking about the guy that left it up for grabs. Kieran Foran. Talk about the loss for him, or Manly losing a guy like Kieran Foran.
Yeah, Kieran Foran and his combination with Cherry Evans was, fantastic for so many years. And we saw the best of Cherry Evans when Foran was next to him. And it's going to be a big loss for them and big shoes to fill for whoever does fill them. So yeah, it's like you said, no one's really talking about the loss of Kieran Foran and the impact that's going to have, not only on the field, but I think off the field as well. Kieran Foran was Manly, and a very very big and influential member of that locker room. And now that he's gone, it isn't. Yeah, it's a loss for sure.
Yeah, totally, mate. We'll see how they recover from that one. We'll see how Manly will go this year. But that is the season previews done and dusted. Let's go on to these ladder predictions, mate. And since you are the guest, I will let you go first. Give us your ladder, mate. 1 all the way down to 17.
So we're going from 1 to 17.
Yep.
So I think the Sharks are going to be the minor premiers. I think they've got the game style which suits regular season well. Their question mark is whether they can take it another level, and do something in the finals. Roosters in second, Penrith in third. I've got South rounding out the four, and South will be my premiers for season 2023. Cowboys just missing the four and fifth. Storm, Melbourne Storm in sixth position. I've kept Parramatta in the 8 at seventh, but I can see them dropping out. A little bit of bias here in this prediction, but I've got Tigers to break their drought and to make the 8. I just think that the impact of Sheens, Benji, and Robbie is phenomenal, and there's a sense of just destiny around the club and in the supporter base at the moment. Dogs, they just miss out on the 8 in 9th. Brisbane at 10th. The Raiders to be the big fallers and the big movers in this year and finish 11th. Manly, Warriors, the Dolphins to finish 14th, which I think may shock a few people. I think they'll win a few games and outperform some of the teams who have been there for a while. Gold Coast in 15th. Newcastle and St. George will get their first spoon since 1999.
Newcastle, very low. Interesting, mate. Interesting. I've got Newcastle much higher. We'll have a look at mine now. So this is pretty big call for me. I thought that Sharks at first was a big call from you, mate. I've still got Penrith. However, I think they'll be the minor premiers, but they won't be as dominant in the final series. I think they'll probably lose maybe game 2 or 3. So I've got Penrith still getting minor premiers. I think that really heavily depends on their hooking rotation and how that works out for them. And, how they recover from the losses of, obviously, Api Coruscant, William Kikau. So I've got Penrith at 1, Sharks at 2, Chooks at 3, Cowboys at 4, Rabbitohs at 5, Parramatta at 6, Storm at 7, Bulldogs at 8. That's my top 8 there. Penrith, Sharks, Roosters, Cowboys, Rabbitohs, Para, Storm, Bulldogs. Then bottom 8, I've got the Raiders to just miss out. Then I've got the Tigers at 10th. I think they'll be dominant. I just don't think they'll be dominant enough to get into the top 8. But we'll have to wait and see. I think they definitely could. I think it's going to be that 3-horse race between the Bulldogs, the Raiders, and the Tigers. Then I've got Broncos 11, Knights 12, Gold Coast 13, Manly 14, Warriors 15, Dolphins 16, and then Dragons 17 to get the spoon there. So last place, I do agree with you there. So two very different ladders, mate. And it'll be very, very interesting to see how all of these teams go in 2023. But our ladder predictions are here, and I will hold you accountable, mate. We'll see how they do go at the end of the year. Now, I've got a question, and I might throw you a little bit off guard because we are going to do a little shout out here, mate. Do you love your Oz tag?
I do. I got back into it this year. Played with a group of mates. We didn't go the best, but we had a bit of fun. That's for sure.
Yeah, well, if you love your Oz tag, mate. Now, do you love the beach as well? Are you a beach guy? Are you keen for a bit of suntan?
Mate, yeah, of course. Everyone loves the beach. You're not Australian if you don't love the beach.
Well, if you love the beach, mate, and you love Oz tag, mate, get into evosportsco.com.au. They're selling all of their Oz tags. They're selling some awesome Oz tag kits. You get tags, you get belts, you get cones as well to set up the game, and you get a waterproof footy. Now, there's always that dickhead at the beach. You're playing touch footy on the beach, and he kicks the ball into the water, mate. Well, this solves that problem because it is a waterproof football. So you get cones, you get belts, you get tags, and you also get the waterproof football as well, mate. Does that just sound absolutely insane? Does that sound like the best thing you've ever heard?
Mate, that's phenomenal.
It is phenomenal.
It's exactly what's needed. They've found a gap in the market and they've smashed it.
They have smashed it, mate. So make sure if you haven't already, I'm sure you have, Hayden, mate, because from what I've just heard, mate, I bet you have. I bet you have. Go to evosportsco.com.au and grab yourself a pair of tags and get this, mate. If it wasn't good enough, if you use the code BIGLES10, you can get 10% off. Mate, it's almost robbery. 10% off.
10%?
10%.
Mate, they may as well give it away for free.
Oh, exactly, mate. They may as well give it away. It's robbery. 10% off these tags. evosportsco.com.au. Family business, mate. You got to support it. Get in there. Get some tags before time runs out. Big Les 10. Thanks for hopping on, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure to do these season previews with you, and can't wait for the next little collab that we do in the future.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me, and enjoy the season that's ahead, and I'll see you when the Tigers are lifting the trophy.
Totally, mate. And I'll be keeping you accountable for that, lad. I'll tell you that for free. I'll be keeping you accountable, mate. We'll be going back. All right. Cheers, brother. Cheers.